Welcome to drillingcontractor.org. My name is Joanne Liu, and joining me is Tom Roberts, the Product Line Director at NOV. Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I understand that NOV is launching the new Helios cutter technology, Helios Inferno. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay, yeah, we're very excited about the Helios Inferno. The main concept behind the cutter is that we're engineering the cutters for specific applications. Once we fully understand the failure mechanisms that that the formation is actually for a particular application, we're able to engineer the right characteristics into the cutter. There's three key characteristics that we're applying to the cutter. We're looking at the thermal resistance, the abrasion resistance, and also the toughness, or if you like, the impact resistance of the cutter. So if we can understand that in a particular application, not all applications are the same, and we understand some applications may be suffering from thermal abrasion resistance, therefore we will engineer a cutter that has superior abrasion resistance. And quite often thermal and abrasion are very close characteristics. We do also understand that other applications are suffering from toughness, and what we'll do there is we will engineer a higher toughness into the actual cutter itself. We're doing a ranking system, and this is we call it a cutter index, and it allows us to utilize our Helios cutters in an application and then improve the characteristics again by ranking one cutter against the next. Again, the characteristics are thermal, abrasion, and toughness.
Tom, tell us a little bit more about the test that Helios went through in the development.
Yeah, sure. So there are 5 specific tests that we perform for the Helios Inferno, and actual for all of our cutters that we test. All the results of these tests are actually fed into a database so that we can calculate the cutter index, the important factor with thermal abrasion and toughness. But the first one is the thermal test, probably the most important. This is an abrasive thermal test with no fluid. The cutter is run dry through granite and eventually breaks down and a wear flat's generated. So the further it runs, the more thermal resistant that cutter is. The second one is the wet test. This is without fluid. With fluid, and actually has, we run it 20 passes and then we measure the wear scar. And then the other 3 tests are related to the toughness of the cutter. So what we're looking at there is impact testing in the axial direction, fatigue testing, with small loads, how much the cutter can take, maybe hundreds of thousands of cycles. And then lastly, the front face impact test, and this is a test where the cutter is in the shearing direction. So all of these tests, again, are fed into the database, and they're used to calculate the cutter index.
Where has it been applied, and what kind of benefits have you seen so far?
Okay, it is a recent success that we've had with this, but in the areas we've applied this, one example, for example, is Williston, North Dakota. It's taken off so large there that there's been positive word of mouth from rig to rig. So we're finding we had a situation there was such an increased demand once we'd applied it. So this was a situation where we understood the failure mechanisms. In this application, it was abrasion and thermal that was important. We developed the cutter for that application. And once we tried it, the demand became once we'd had the initial success, the demand was so high that it was very difficult keeping up with that kind of demand. But the example that I'd like to give there is we drill the same interval, we drill it faster, but the dulls look so much superior. It's because we're overcoming that thermal abrasive wear that was seen previously. It's a dramatic difference. And of course, if we can maintain the cutter sharpness longer, this helps with stability and steerability, because that's how the bit design, it's how it's designed initially. So if you can maintain that, obviously that is good for the customer and for the directional drillers, because they're able to maintain the well path for that application. So that's one application. But what we're finding now, we're having runs in Midland, Texas, Central America, throughout the US. It's spreading very fast. We expect now we're moving into Eastern Hemisphere, but most of the runs that we have to date are in the US at this time.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for telling us more about the Helios Inferno.
Thank you, Joanne. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on drillingcontractor.org.